A mother placed a loving note in her 6-year-old son's lunchbox, and just 1 hour later, she was shot dead. The question is, what was her crime? On a Chicago street, one fight changed everything: a mother, her ex-boyfriend, and his new girlfriend. Then gunshots rang out. But the most shocking part? The shooter was released with no charges. If your mother was murdered just an hour after dropping you off at school and the killer walked free, would you call that justice or injustice? A note in a lunchbox, a mother's final gift to her son. What happened next shook an entire community. A tragic story out of Chicago has left a community heartbroken and searching for answers. 31-year-old Romeca Meeks Unaliver, a devoted mother and nursing student, was fatally shot just minutes after dropping her 6-year-old son off at school. The young boy had no idea that the loving note his mother tucked into his lunchbox that morning would be the last gift she ever gave him. According to the Chicago Police Department, CPD, officers responded to several 911 calls around 9:35 a.m. on September 8, 2025. They arrived near Shurak Road and State Street, where Romeca was found lying in the street with multiple gunshot wounds to her chin and thigh. She was rushed to Stroger Hospital, but sadly did not survive. Police say the shooting followed a physical altercation between Romeca and Fadiae Holly Johnson, who reportedly holds a concealed carry license. During the fight, Johnson allegedly drew a firearm and fired multiple rounds at close range. Witnesses also claim that Romeca's ex, Carlos Loy, was present and placed her in a headlock just moments before the shots were fired. Johnson remained at the scene, surrendered her weapon, and was immediately taken into custody. However, in a decision that shocked Romeca's loved ones, she was later released without charges. CPD has declined to comment further, citing the ongoing investigation. For Romeca's family, the news is unbearable. Her mother, Tina McMiller, described her daughter as kind, sweet, loving, supportive, and an amazing mother. With tears in her eyes, she added, "Romeca was my baby." Tina is now caring for her grandson, who will grow up without the mother who adored him. Family members say that Romeca Meeks Unaliver had been caught in a long and painful cycle with her ex, Carlos Loy. Their relationship, once filled with promise, had turned volatile over time, leaving scars that went far beyond emotional wounds. At one point, Romeca made the difficult decision to file a restraining order against Carlos, hoping the law would provide a layer of protection for herself and her young son. The documents cited troubling incidents: property damage, intimidation, and constant harassment. According to relatives, Carlos had broken her balcony window during one heated episode. On another occasion, he allegedly destroyed her television and took personal belongings from her home. Each act added to the mounting evidence that the relationship was no longer safe. Filing that restraining order was not a matter of bitterness or revenge. It was Romeca's way of drawing a boundary, of saying enough was enough. But as so many women in similar situations know, a restraining order can feel like a thin piece of paper against the weight of a toxic connection. The tension didn't magically disappear once it was filed. Family members recall that Romeca continued to live in a constant state of caution, always aware that any interaction with Carlos could ignite into conflict. Despite her attempts to protect herself, the thread tying them together, their 6-year-old son, meant complete separation was never truly possible. On the morning of September 8, 2025, those fears became reality. After dropping her son off at school, Romeca found herself outside of Carlos's home. What exactly led her there remains debated. Some say she confronted him about his lies and the presence of another woman, while others argue she was provoked into a situation that quickly spiraled out of control. What is certain is that a confrontation broke out, one that would end in tragedy. Witnesses reported seeing Carlos place Romeca in a headlock during the altercation, a move that escalated the already volatile scene. At that moment, Carlos's new partner, Fadiae Holly Johnson, became involved. Holly, who was licensed to carry a firearm, later told authorities she feared for her safety. Instead of retreating, she pulled out her gun and fired multiple times at close range. Romeca was struck in the chin and thigh, collapsing on the pavement. Emergency responders rushed to the scene after multiple 911 calls came in. They found Romeca lying in the street, her body riddled with wounds. She was transported to Stroger Hospital, but despite the efforts of medical staff, she did not survive. In an instant, a vibrant 31-year-old woman, a mother, a daughter, and a friend, was gone. What followed only deepened the heartbreak for her loved ones. Holly was immediately taken into custody, and her weapon was recovered at the scene. For a moment, it seemed justice might follow quickly. But then came the shocking twist: she was released without charges. Police cited an ongoing investigation and refused to provide further details. To Romeca's family, this decision felt like salt in an open wound. Her mother, Tina McMiller, has spoken openly about her grief. To her, Romeca wasn't just another headline in the long list of Chicago gun violence victims. She was her baby girl, kind, sweet, loving, and deeply devoted to her son. Tina describes her daughter as supportive and protective, someone who gave her best to family and friends. Now, she is left with the impossible task of raising her grandson, who will grow up without the mother who loved him fiercely. Romeca's loved ones have gathered at vigils and balloon releases, trying to honor her life while demanding accountability. They remember her not only as a victim of violence, but as a woman with dreams and ambitions. She had been studying to become a nurse, motivated by her desire to help others. That path was abruptly cut short, leaving the community to wonder what kind of impact she might have made had her life not been stolen. Meanwhile, Holly's side of the story paints a different picture. Her friends insist she was not a jealous partner looking for a fight. They describe her as someone from a solid, supportive family, a woman who wasn't struggling financially and had her life in order. Some argue she reached her breaking point after repeated confrontations with Romeca. They frame her actions as a desperate response rather than a malicious choice. But even those who defend Holly admit the outcome was devastating. As one acquaintance put it, "I don't like the decision she made to shoot. Roma didn't deserve to lose her life. Everyone has a breaking point, but this went too far." The question dividing the public now is whether Holly's actions were self-defense or unjustified violence. If she truly feared for her life, should that absolve her? Or did she cross a line that should never be excused? At the center of this debate is a 6-year-old boy who has lost the most important person in his world. He will grow up with the memory of a mother who wrote him a loving note in his lunchbox the morning she died. That small act of care, a reminder of her love, stands in painful contrast to the violence that ended her life only an hour later. As the investigation continues, Romeca's family insists that justice must be served. They are not only fighting for her memory, but also for the countless women whose cries for protection are too often ignored until it is too late. For them, this is not just a story about a crime scene, a restraining order, or police procedure. It is the story of a young woman who deserved safety, peace, and the chance to see her son grow up. Carlos's supporters portray a very different picture. They argue that Romeca often exaggerated situations to paint herself as the victim. According to Holly Johnson's relatives, Carlos had been trying to move forward with his life, while Romeca struggled to let go of the relationship. The claim that she blocked his car that morning feeds into their version of events, that she deliberately provoked him, creating a situation that spiraled into violence. To them, it was not Carlos who sought the confrontation but Romeca, who had repeatedly brought conflict to his doorstep. The problem with these dueling narratives is that they both contain fragments of truth, at least in the eyes of those telling them. Domestic disputes rarely present themselves as clean, simple stories of villain versus victim. Instead, they exist in a messy gray area, shaped by emotions, history, and the deeply personal struggles of the people involved. Social media, with its constant stream of clips, photos, and commentary, has only intensified this complexity. A single video might show Romeca raising her voice or stepping aggressively toward Carlos, but it cannot capture the months or years of backstory that led to that moment. What the videos do show, however, is a pattern: two people locked in a cycle of confrontation. Sometimes it was Carlos pushing back, other times it was Romeca pressing forward. This back-and-forth dynamic paints a picture of a toxic relationship where neither side seemed able or willing to disengage completely. For Romeca's loved ones, this was evidence of a woman trapped in a dangerous environment, one she could not fully escape. For Carlos's family, it was proof that she continued to insert herself into his life, even after efforts to cut ties. The morning of the shooting, then, becomes the tragic intersection of all these unresolved tensions. To Romeca's supporters, she was once again walking into danger, confronting a man she had every reason to fear. To Carlos's defenders, she was escalating a situation, blocking his car and forcing a conflict that could have been avoided. Both sides agree on one thing: the encounter turned deadly, and the loss of life cannot be undone. Beyond the personal drama, The case has sparked broader conversations about domestic violence, accountability, and the limits of intervention. Advocates for survivors point out that blaming Romeca for escalating the fight ignores the larger issue of why she felt unsafe around Carlos in the first place. They argue that labeling her as the aggressor risks silencing countless women who find themselves in similar situations, women who speak up, defend themselves, or confront abusers, only to have their actions turned against them. At the same time, others caution against dismissing the possibility that Romeca's actions contributed to the volatility of the encounter. They emphasize that understanding the full story requires examining both individuals' choices, not just one. If Romeca did block Carlos's car and initiate the argument, they argue, then accountability cannot fall on one side alone. The tragedy in this framing is that two people caught in a toxic cycle allowed their conflict to reach its most irreversible breaking point. The debate has played out not just in living rooms and courtrooms, but across the digital landscape. On TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, people dissect the available videos frame by frame, each side seeking validation for its perspective. Hashtags trend, arguments flare in comment sections, and the story morphs into something larger than just a private dispute. It becomes a symbol, for some, of the dangers women face when trying to leave difficult relationships, for others, of how narratives can be twisted when one party is unfairly villainized. In the end, the truth may never be fully captured in a single clip, a family's testimony, or even the eventual courtroom verdict. What remains undeniable is the human cost. A woman is gone, a family is grieving, and a community is left fractured. Whether Romeca was a victim who fell into the trap of confronting her abuser or a participant in a toxic cycle that ended in violence, her story reflects the messy, painful realities that too often lie beneath headlines about domestic disputes. And so, as families on both sides continue to defend their loved ones, what lingers is not just a battle over blame, but a haunting reminder of how fragile the line can be between confrontation and catastrophe. As the case develops, the central question remains: why has no one been held accountable for Romeca's death? Her family and community continue to demand justice, unwilling to accept that such a violent end could be explained away as self-defense. In Romeca's memory, friends and family gathered for a balloon release at 68th and Normal in Englewood, where she once attended high school. What they want now is clarity, accountability, and above all, justice for a mother whose life was cut short far too soon. The tragedy surrounding Romeca Meeks Blackman's death continues to spark questions, debates, and deep emotions within the community. Videos have surfaced showing heated confrontations between Romeca and her ex, Carlos Loy, near his home on Chirac and South State Street. The location is recognizable by the nearby Shark's Fish and Chicken restaurant, a landmark that confirms the setting of that fatal morning. In the clips, Romeca can be heard confronting Carlos about lies, infidelity, and feeling deceived, her anger raw and unfiltered. This was the same corner where the deadly altercation unfolded. What began as another tense dispute quickly escalated when Fadiae Holly Johnson, Carlos's new partner, allegedly fired the shots that ended Romeca's life. Holly has since said she feared for her safety, a claim that, paired with her concealed carry license and restraining order, may have influenced her release without charges. Well, it's unsettling to watch someone from a stable environment with no outward signs of instability make a decision so catastrophic. It reminds them that tragedy doesn't always stem from dysfunction. Sometimes it comes from a single moment of anger, panic, or misjudgment. And in those moments, even people with the strongest foundations can make choices that alter lives forever. The community is now split between those who believe Holly was pushed to her breaking point and those who see no justification for her actions. The conversation has become less about whether Holly was good or bad and more about accountability, consequences, and the weight of a single choice. At the heart of it all, however, is a life that was cut short. Romeca's absence continues to echo, reminding everyone that no explanation, no matter how convincing, can undo the damage or erase the grief left behind. Others argue the situation was more complicated, pointing out that everyone has a breaking point. They insist Holly may have acted under pressure, unable to handle what they describe as ongoing conflict and confrontation from Romeca. Still, that explanation offers little comfort to those mourning a young mother whose 6-year-old son will now grow up without her. Questions about the crime scene itself add to the confusion. Witnesses insist the shooting happened directly in front of Carlos's house, just down the street from the school, rather than at the school itself. Bloodstains near a storefront appear to support that claim. This detail has led many to believe that after dropping her son off, Romeca went straight to confront Carlos, where the fight with Holly took a deadly turn. But even if that's true, the core issue remains the same. A young woman's life was cut short in a violent, unnecessary way. This case has divided opinion, with some calling Holly's actions self-defense, while others see them as murder disguised under legal technicalities. What no one can deny is the devastating impact. A 6-year-old child left without his mother, a grieving family demanding justice, and a community left shaken. So now the question turns to you. What do you think about the circumstances of Romeca's death? Was this truly self-defense, or was her life stolen without accountability? Let's talk about it. Share your thoughts below, and as always, stay tuned for more updates.